Welcome to the second in our series of webinars on open software-defined automation. This webinar is sponsored by Schneider Electric and Automation.com, a subsidiary of the International Society of Automation. I am Renee Bassett, Chief Editor of Automation.com, and I will be your host. In our first webinar, we discussed the evolution from hardware to software-based automation systems and the advantages of decoupling control logic from physical devices. In this installment, we'll discuss the use of open standards and why they're important. We'll also touch on how open software-defined automation is being implemented today by users of Schneider Electric's EcoStruxure Automation Expert software. I've got the perfect guests for this discussion. I'd like to welcome our speakers and have them tell us about themselves and their organizations. Andre, would you please go first?
Oh, yes, certainly. And thank you, Renee, for having me here again with this exciting topic. So my name is Andre Babineau. I'm the Country Director for Software-Defined Automation here in Canada. I'm based in the sunny Montreal. And really, I'm excited to be here to talk about the open standard because they're really a game changer in the industrial automation as we know it. And I'm here in my role in the country director really to drive this topic into our end user installation and programs. And I was part of the development of these, but now really being able to bring it to our end user and our customer makes it even more exciting. So thank you for having me.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Sarat, welcome to you. Would you please tell us about yourself and your experience in your organization?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Likewise, I'm glad to be here to be part of this discussion and share my thoughts and what my organization is doing to promote openness in industrial automation. I'm Sarath Molakasima in the role of Chief Architect at Universal Automation Organization. My career started as a SCADA commissioning engineer and then it progressed into research and development of industrial control system software and products. And right now I am mostly into defining the solution and system architecture for industrial control systems and products. And I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to share my thoughts about openness in industrial automation. Thank you, Renee.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's start with a little bit of history and context. Andre, could you walk us through a bit of the evolution from the hardware-bound to the software-defined industrial automation systems?
Oh, certainly, Renee. This industry is probably close to 100, 125 years old. And it all started with mechanical solution and system, also based on pneumatic and large control panel that we used to see in our industry. And it started evolving with the venue of electronics, and this is where also we saw the venue of PLC basically replacing this relay logic that we have from an electrical system now to an electronic system base. And then as this thing continued in the 60s and the 70s, we've seen an evolution to see distributed control system basically bringing all together those different controllers or independent PLC into a one consolidated solution. And then we've seen different companies starting to bring those things together as their own total package solution for customer. So basically when an end user was dealing with a company, was dealing with the whole solution from a hardware, software, etc. perspective, even services. Now that we're continuing to do this evolution and now that we have a little bit more power in and basically managing better some of this IT technology, we now see the software-defined automation. And really what it means, it's really trying to decouple this hardware from the software. So basically you can now have the choice, or the end user have the choice to select the best software solution or control solution and the best hardware solution for their problem and really making sure they address their current problem. So really it brings this level of flexibility that we've never seen in the market in automation from all these 100 years. And what we see also from a software defined is this digital continuity. How do we bring data from this level 0 where we have our instruments and so on up to level 5 to the ERP and so on, because this is where decisions are being taken. And that software transition is required not only from this hardware perspective at the OT level, but also how does it integrate into this IT system. And the lastly, which is not a simple thing, it brings the software-defined automation, brings the concept of interoperability in this heterogeneous systems that our customer have. They may have different vendors, but now with software-defined, you can start collecting this information into one single view, which is a critical element of software-defined automation.
I understand. I would think, though, that there's also been some challenges with this evolution and transition. Surat, could you talk about some of those?
Yep. One of the major challenges this evolution caused is fragmentation. As of today, many plants operate with these legacy systems from different vendors that became part of the system, and these legacy systems do not talk to each other, thus creating islands of technology. And this is an impediment for inefficiencies, causing inefficiencies, and it limits scalability and it slows down innovation. So, in short, evolution was good. At the same time, it brought in a challenge of fragmentation, which we need to address and progress towards an openness and more interoperable and scalable solution.
Got it. Is there anything you'd like to add, Andre, on the challenges of this evolution?
Yeah, Sarah is absolutely right. There's really a challenge of seeing all these islands basically remaining on their own. Now, what we need to see from a software-defined perspective and standardization across the different vendors is really communication protocol and architecture. And this is where we see open standard to come in. We've seen OPC UA trying to become kind of the de facto standard, but also we see other bodies like Open Process Automation Forum that basically base their open communication framework on OPC UA. And we see also Margot trying to define the necessary protocol required for workload management across vendors. So really there's this drive of standardization around this communication to remove these islands.
Well, let's define our terms a little bit. Surat, could you tell me what open standards are and provide us some specific examples?
Yeah, sure. Open standards are publicly available software specifications that anyone can implement. These software specifications are developed collaboratively and are vendor neutral. A lot of vendors come together, a lot of industry specialists come together and define these specifications. And some of the good examples for such specifications are, as Andre mentioned before, OPC UA, OLE in process automation and unified automation bring together a big specification which facilitates interoperability and communication. It's a standardized communication protocol specification that helps achieve integration of different systems talking the same language. Then comes the MQTT. The MQTT initially surfaced in the IT world for edge communications to the cloud. It's a very lightweight messaging protocol, which ideally is for IoT, but it doesn't necessarily stop you from using it for industry if you are able to make the best use of its power and its lightweightedness. There is another standard, 61499. It's an International Electro Commission standard, IEC 61499. This standard standardizes the way the distributed control systems are designed, developed, and operated. If the standard is put to use, you can see a day where distributed controllers from different vendors can seamlessly communicate with each other and interoperate. Then comes a good number of standards from International Society of Automation. For example, like ISA 88, ISA 100, which talk about how do you secure industrial control systems. So this is a very simple list, a very minimal list that I quoted, but then there is a wider effort in industry from industry experts to create more and more such open specifications that bring in the needed openness that is required in industry for flexibility, for resilience, and being future.
Surat, when it comes to developing these open standards, who or what organizations are doing that work?
Again, just to reiterate some of these organizations, IEEE is one of the body which has been working on these kind of standards for a long time already. Then comes ISA, International Society of Automation. There is OPC Foundation, and there is International Electro Commission, IEC. Likewise, there are even some country-specific organizations. The list is exhaustive. I cannot quote all the names here, but all these bodies are again non-profit organizations, bodies which are vendor neutral, and their aim is to create the specifications which bring openness in the industry.
Surat, what would you say is the difference between open standards and the proprietary standards that are developed by vendors?
Yeah, so the proprietary standards are controlled by individual organizations, which means even if an organization is coming up with a standard, it is internally focused. It is focused towards improving their products. It is focused towards improving interoperability within their products. On the other hand, the open standards are done vendor neutral, which means the target of this open standards is to achieve the same level of interoperability, achieve the same level of flexibility that can be achieved within an organization across organizations. That's the significant difference between proprietary standards and open standards. Open standards, if embraced, obviously promote all these flexibilities and openness.
Andre, what would you have to say about how open standards are different from proprietary standards, and how do they relate to the concept of open automation?
Excellent question. So open automation built on standard, we've just been describing for a little while here, to create a flexible modular system, really allowing software component to be reused across different hardware platforms, supporting multi-vendor environments, and enabling faster deployment and innovation, which is a key element to achieve the manufacturing efficiency that we're looking for. It also allows interoperability between vendors, which was not possible in the past. Although some systems were able to communicate with each other, but it was really cumbersome and prone to error and required a high level of maintenance, and it was just based on simple exchange of table of data interface. Now the new open standard really allow us now to see better integration and to see this interoperability that we talked before.
So let's talk a little bit about the organization and put a spotlight on UAO. Sarat, how long has the group been around, and what does the acronym stand for?
Okay. UAO acronym stands for Universal Automation Organization. The organization is founded in year 2021. It's an organization of about 5 years of age, and the mission and goal of this organization is to promote openness in industrial automation. What we do, we are not a body which creates specifications and standards. Rather, we are a body which promote adoption and acceleration of the adoption and implementation of these open standards to achieve the openness needed in industrial automation. So this is a bit different between the regular standard and specification bodies and what exactly we do. We promote interoperable ecosystem of products and offers, and in this effort we have decided to create shared IP based on these open standards and specifications. This is what we promote. We promote creation of shared IP, collaboration across vendors, users, and academics in order to implement these open standards and specifications which are truly interoperable.
This shift in mindset from proprietary control systems to open software-defined platforms seems like it's pretty essential for the way we're moving forward. Let's get into the why and why open standards and open automation matter right now today. Sarat, why is it important for users to shift their mindset in this way?
Yeah, it's very important to understand what advantages and benefits a particular principle or concept brings to the table, to think of whether you want to embrace it, whether you want to implement it, whether you want to practice it. So I try to highlight here some of the important advantages that the open standards and specifications bring to the vendors, the users, and of course everyone in industry. The first and foremost is interoperability. Imagine a situation in a plant where you are using a vendor system, and for some reason this vendor is unable to supply you some particular hardware or software, and you are in a tremendous pressure to replace this with another one. And if you are able to quickly source something from the market which is interoperable with the existing hardware and software, that's the hit. And this is what is true interoperability. The scalability. You start with a certain system, and now you are trying to scale your industry, you're trying to increase your production capacity, and you want to scale your system. Now, if you are vendor locked in, you are, and your timeline, your go-to market is totally locked in with the vendor. On the other hand, if the systems are open, if the systems are built on open standard, you could easily scale the system by sourcing whatever is available in the market which meets your needs and standards. That's the second advantage that you get. And of course, the cost efficiency. As Andre was pointing it out, with the proprietary standards and the vendor lock-in, the amount of time and effort that goes into getting these systems work with each other is not cost effective. So if you are embracing openness, open standards and specifications, there is a significant cut down in the cost in terms of integration, maintenance, configuration, a lot of aspects of the engineering that you do with these systems. Then the fourth one, which again is very, very important, innovation. As an end user or as a vendor, you want to innovate, you want to keep improving, you want to keep leverage the new technologies and put them to use, like for example artificial intelligence. Having an open specification and an open standard and open interfaces that are publicly advertised, it's very, very easy for you to quickly adapt and start using these new technologies and put them to use and come up with innovative ways of optimizing production or achieving the best efficiency. Now the security and compliance has now become a de facto standard. They are highly regulated by the governments. Governments do say that whatever you do, you should be able to explain, audit, and go through this process. Unless you are using open standards and specifications to get proprietary stuff certified, to get proprietary stuff audited, is going to be a nightmare. Using the open standards and specifications also gives you this important ability to undergo these security and compliance audits and standards. So these are the major advantages what I see when someone is embracing the openness, open protocols and open standards and specifications.
Andre, is there something you would like to add, or can you give us some examples of where it's actually being done today?
Sure. I think open standards are critical and important today. And it's really to give back what I call the power of choice to the end user. Give them back with their system, they have the capability to decide what they want to do and how they want to do it, and don't necessarily impose to them what the supplier sees for their future. So really, with our solution, EcoStruxure Automation Expert, based on IEC 61499 as a standard that Sarat was describing, it allows you to deploy this control logic across multi-vendor edge devices, being from the cloud or on-premise, or even to traditional controllers. All of this without the consideration of the architecture, that the customer will have the power to decide. It's a huge leap in flexibility, and it saves a large amount of hours of maintenance and engineering hours to be able to do such a solution in an environment that's fully open and allows the customer to develop the way he needs it for its specific needs. The other benefit of these open standard is also the closeness or the course of IT and OT coming together. If we look at the leading edge IT infrastructure today, the latest development in the IT is called event-driven architecture. And that's exactly what we're doing with our EcoStruxure Automation Expert. It's all event-driven. And the reason why IT is going towards that direction is to have better time resolution and better throughput in their system. So we're already there with Schneider Electric with EcoStruxure Automation Expert, and that's also why our customers are leveraging such a solution to achieve the level of efficiency that we're looking for.
See, it does seem like there are so many organizations that, as we've mentioned earlier, with regard to supporting open standards and open organizations. What is the benefit, Andre, for the many people coming together with regard to open standards, particularly through the organizations we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I would say there is challenges, obviously, but this is where the partnership and organization like universalautomation.org can be really useful. Universalautomation.org is open to suppliers, end users, and obviously university or any scholarship type of approach. So really it's a fully open in that sense as well, that it opens to anyone that want to participate and brings those people together to look together what would be the future, right? They're really taking ownership of the compatibility and define the standard and how to move it forward. So it's all the members deciding the future of automation. And that makes it key to make sure that these standards and this openness that we're driving for become successful. Right? I believe we'll see more and more of these open solutions as the end user leverage those benefits and will ask for more openness as they see the benefits in their life cycle costs, obsolescence reduction, and also flexibility, as we mentioned.
Sarat, you mentioned a number of organizations that come together in UAO. How are those organizations driving open automation initiatives, and what are you doing to support them there, and what organizations are you supporting?
Yep. So we at UAO, we believe in innovation through collaboration. Days are gone where innovation is done in isolation. So more and more innovation, best innovation, better innovation happens in collaboration and partnership. Believing that we at UAO, we have worked with number of organizations, and we always work in a model where we make a liaison agreement with all these open standard organizations where we share, for example, stage on the same conference, where we promote a particular implementation or a particular adoption of technology together. So in this context, I would like to refer to a couple of such initiatives, what we did, one of them being the Open Process Automation Framework. We have partnered with the OPAF organization in promoting implementation of Open Process Automation specification, which is the OPAS standard. And I can say that it is widely appreciated, not just by the two of us, but by the industry and all the industry organizations which were part of this initiative, where the OPAS was implemented as a proof of concept, and right now it is also part of lighthouse implementation project of one of the big end user in oil and gas. So what I would like to highlight here is collaboration between all these standard organizations and bodies which promote open standards and specifications is key to accelerating and increasing the adoption of these open standards and specifications, and that's what we work towards in Universal Automation.
Andre, Schneider Electric is a partner in UAO as a vendor. Can you tell us what Schneider provides in that cooperation and what Schneider gets out of its participation?
Great question. Yeah, Schneider Electric is one of the founding members of universalautomation.org, and it has provided to Universal Automation the runtime engine, or that share runtime that the UAO members are now managing and making sure it has the right feature set going forward to continue to provide the right value of this open solution. It does provide to us and the members the best solution for interoperability and portability across multi-hardware vendor, and that's really what UAO brings. From a Schneider solution perspective, we got EcoStruxure Automation Expert, which is based on this shared runtime that UAO maintain, and continue to develop this platform. And really, Schneider Electric believes that open software automation solution is the key to continue to bring innovation in the automation and bring the higher level of manufacturing efficiency that is required in this day and time.
Andre, you had mentioned other partnerships, particularly in the IT space. Can you tell us what advantages partnering with those kinds of organizations bring to industrial operations?
Absolutely, and this is a key element, and we talked a little bit about it, that there's really this merge of IT and OT. And yes, Schneider Electric has partnership with Intel and developed a few things. We have partnership with Microsoft and Accenture, and all together they do bring the IT knowledge from an AI and a cloud capabilities, and we bring the industrial automation, which is required because those two were kind of, I would say, not necessarily working together or working in parallel in the past, but now we need to see the merge, and we need to bring both sides into the mix to make sure we get a seamless integration. So it's really important to have those collaboration to scale this open automation and do it globally, and bring IT and OT together and bring our customer with us, because they are faced with the same challenge. And one of the things that we know that from an OT perspective we bring in IT is all the concept of real time, because this is where we operate, which is not necessarily why IT operates, but IT has other capabilities that is essential to bring the efficiency we talked about before.
Great. Let us switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the concerns with regard to open automation and open standards. Sarat, some people say that open is somehow less secure. Is it?
That's a totally misconception. I'm not a great believer in security through obscurity. Okay? You cannot be secure because you're hiding something from someone. In fact, the open standards and specifications actually bring in more security because you are well aware of what you're doing. You exactly know what is happening where, which helps you figure out, how can I close this? How can I prevent someone from intruding here? How can I prevent some software coming and muddling with my software? Right? Unless you understand and know your system very well, you cannot secure it. And be careful, what you can secure is what you know. You cannot secure what you don't know. So it's always good to know what you have so that you can secure it. And the open standards and specifications, being open, being transparent, they help you understand your system to the deepest level possible and secure it in the best way by implicitly making your architecture, your design, your implementation secure from day one or day zero rather.
And Sarat, what about the complexity that I mentioned earlier? Some users think that open systems are just too complex to manage.
Yeah, that again is a misconception. I would say, yes, initially adapting open standards and specifications looks very complex. Now, this is quite common. You don't know what you don't know, and you know what you know. So until you know what it is, it's incorrect to say it is complex, right? So once you start learning it, once you start understanding it, it eases out. And I would say without understanding what open standards bring and what open specifications bring, saying that it is complex is incorrect. However, I agree to the fact that it could get complex when you're trying to put in a very big system using many open standards and specifications. Yes, initially you have to spend quite a bit of time understanding what they are, but once you know it, it's not complex anymore. And it brings you a lot more as advantages, what I explained before.
So how important is governance in this realm, and what form does that take?
Yeah, governance is key to implementing and promoting open standards and specifications. Without proper governance, there is always a possibility that people misuse it. People don't use it in the way they are supposed to use it and then claim it as complex, not useful, and so on and so forth. So governance models like, for example, what OPC Foundation has, they do this interoperability testing of every product which is released into the OPC UA, and they certify saying this is OPC UA certified, which kind of promotes that the end users can just blindly close their eyes and use it because it is promoted and it's stamped by OPC UA. So governance models are key. Governance models are a must to ensure that if someone is claiming that they have put together the open standard in their product or their product is built as per open specification, certifying them and making sure that they are truly adopting the open standard and specification and building the product is key to making these standards and specifications a good success.
Andre, is there anything you'd like to add with regard to governance or managing open systems going forward?
It is definitely a key, and that's why I think we're having universalautomation.org allows this more rigor in those open systems to make sure that critical infrastructure like we're operating with the automation and control solution we're providing stay safe and stay cyber secure with this type of governance. So I think it's a key element, and it will continue and required to be there in continuity for our end user.
Well, let's turn now to some of the future for open standards and open automation. Sarat, what role can open standards play in the digital transformation efforts that users are involved in going forward?
Great question. The open standards and specifications are foundational in IT/OT integration, especially having known that the operation space and the IT space remained in isolation or they were not so well connected before the digital transformation wave that started few years back. Having open or using openness or using open standards and specification helps you seamlessly interface the IT systems with the OT systems, and this interfacing is no more vendor locked. This interfacing is open, which means today, let's say you are using an enterprise application from Microsoft and then you are using a product from Schneider Electric and you are making them talk to each other through certain effort, and tomorrow for some reason you want to move away from Microsoft and go to Google or go to Oracle for some reason. It can be a business reason, it can be a technical reason, whatever it is. But then when you are using this open specification and standard for this interfacing, you can easily move from one to the other. So this is what the important advantage that you get if you use this open standards and specifications, especially in rapidly changing, rapidly evolving IT space. As you know, today technology, tomorrow is no more current. It's legacy by tomorrow. So in such a rapid changing situation, if you are embracing an open standard, like for example, OPC UA for moving your data from operation floor to the IT floor, you're secure, you're safe, and you are future proof.
Andre, what do you think the future holds, and how does it involve open automation systems?
I think open technology gives user the freedom, or what I call earlier the power of choice, to move from one vendor lock-in to a vendor agnostic model. Then back the possibility to go where and scale the system exactly the way they need it. It breaks down the silo through open standard as we discussed. It solves the issue tied to legacy system that we see today, that as our customer has system that's maybe 20, 30, 40 years old, so that they need to keep and maintain, which is extremely costly. We give them now the possibility to move up and bring that manufacturing efficiency. So the software-defined approach that decouple that software from hardware and enabling all the flexibility and scalability we talked about provide also to the user the benefit from a consistent experience across the different hardware, which was never seen before, and it introduced the plug and produce automation to ensure the portability and the seamless integration. We've seen also global collaboration with government, industry, and academia to work together to standardize and scale up on automation, always in the goal to become more efficient in our manufacturing industry. And all of this can be delivered to our solution, EcoStruxure Automation Expert, that combining the core pillar of hardware independence, application centricity, and distributed intelligence with digital continuity.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, I would like to thank you for answering my questions and give you a chance to give any final thoughts on why open standards matter today. But before we do that, I'd like to get some audience questions. So Sarat, I'll have you go first in a moment, but I want to remind our audience that you can use the questions I can't to submit questions for our speakers. And if you'd like a particular person to answer, please include their name in your question. Questions that don't get answered may be answered by email. So Sarat, any final thoughts before we get to our audience questions?
Oh yeah. First of all, thank you very much for having me here today to share my thoughts on open standards and specifications and what kind of advantages they bring and how useful they are in terms of building a system which is future-proof, which is interoperable, which promotes portability, which promotes interchangeability, so on and so forth. My only urge or request to the community is do at these initiatives with an open mind. Come, join us, and let's build the future of industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Andre, what about you?
Absolutely. The first thing that we need to talk about is the future is open. It's open, it's interoperable, and most likely software defined. It's not our imagination, and it's just not a talk or webinar here. This revolution of software defined, it's happening. There are people that are already installed and running their plan with such solution. Now it's for you to get in touch with your Schneider Electric representative to learn more about what we can offer with our EcoStruxure Automation Expert. And thank you again for inviting me.
Andre, that's a perfect opportunity for me to say that our next installment of our webinar series will talk about some of those specific installations that are happening right now and use actual user sites that are experiencing the benefits of open automation. So our audience can stay tuned for that. So thank you, gentlemen, very much for answering my questions earlier. We do have some additional ones that came in from our audience, and I'd like us to just look at those now. The first one that's come in is for you, Andre.
All right.
What lessons can be learned from the IT transition to openness that could be applied in the industrial automation space?
Oh, quite interesting question. Definitely we have learned and we're trying to learn from the IT journey toward openness. In the last 2 decades, we have seen OT adopting more IT solution in the networking, in the HMI world, and even in the OS world, right? There was a lot more IT interaction where before we were all in bespoke for OT. And if we look at IT, it really started thriving and really moving when they start moving from proprietary vendor-specific protocol to open standard like TCP, IP, HTTP, etc., that are Ethernet based. This is really where I would say it exploded if we go back in the early 2000s. And we're seeing basically the similar approach that we've seen in IT, in the OT with the OPC solution, as well as MQTT. And as we have a real-time component, we also see the raise and the need for the time-sensitive network piece as well. So all these standards, as we discussed earlier on, provide seamless communication between the different systems, or what we call the island and the silos, from different vendors, making and providing this interoperability, while again, as we discussed, giving back the power of choice to the end user to select the proper solution or change, as Sarah was mentioning, from one vendor to the other one, as long as the communication remains standard and the same. And also from an open specific perspective, we have seen in the past Linux, which was back in the early 90s, really more a lab, or I would say what they call rat labs, that were using it to develop some specific program and exploration. But now it's the main foundation of all the new data centers that we're seeing that are just keeps on exploding. So this is also the journey we're looking at. They've been through it, experienced it, and really develop it to make it that secure and solid platform that we can leverage. And what we see also from an OT perspective is a collaboration between the open bodies that we've seen, UAO being one of them, obviously, but there's a few other ones that allows that faster development and that go-to-market that benefits greatly our end user. The last aspect that was discussed a little bit is that cybersecurity and leveraging what IT has done and what they've done in this openness. And as Sarah was mentioning, it becomes a lot more visible and transparent to see how well this solution is cyber secure. And again, it makes it a faster and better access to data in the OT space.
Perfect, thank you. I do want to revise our look ahead question that we didn't get to, and I'd like both of you gentlemen to answer this one about, and we'll start with Sarat, about how open standards going forward influence the integration of AI and edge computing in industrial systems.
Again, a very, very relevant question for the current state of the technology and the industry. Artificial intelligence, as we all know, has become part and parcel of the life, of course, in the normal life, and also it's influencing the industry and the way industry operates and the industry works a lot. So it's a great question, especially when industry is investing into an initiative like artificial intelligence, which requires huge amounts of data to be moved from layer 0 up to layer 5 and then back. This is where there is a need to be open. This is where there is a need to be embracing an open specification, so that this pipe that you build from layer 0 to layer 5 is secure for the future, which means if this pipe is open, if this pipe, how this pipe works is known to everyone, it makes it possible that any vendor and any end user can easily interoperate uh, with other vendor solutions, and the end users get the best benefit out of it. Now, open standards, they greatly influence the integration of AI to the edge. And as we know, AI has different forms. At the most, the models are trained and created in the cloud, and then the models are deployed to the edge for operation. Now, for this seamless integrity or interfacing integration, an open standard is the best way to move forward and get it done, so that at any point in time, you have to make changes. It stays flexible. If you want to add new thing, it makes it scalable. So to me, openness is very, very key to achieving this. And of course, the data ingestion from layer 0 to layer 5, for example, the OPC-UA, the MQTT, these open standards and specifications have solved this problem. You don't want to invest into solving the problem by other mean, which is vendor specific or which is customized. So that again is one of the important aspect if you are using open standard and specification. And in today's world, usability and contextualization of data is key to make the data used for artificial intelligence, and putting the outcome of the artificial intelligence to use into operations. So this is where again the contextualization, if it is done using an open standard or specification, then you don't have to change your system every time you bring in some new element or new component into the system. So in a nutshell, having heterogeneous systems working together, and then helping AI deliver what it is meant to deliver is key to the integration of AI into industrial control systems and edge computing.
Thank you, Surat. I appreciate that. Our next question from the audience is a listener says, not everyone embraces change easily. What is some advice for helping end users adapt to this change? And which industries are early adopters are the ones to look towards for examples? Andre, would you like to take that question?
Sure. If I take the last piece of the question, which industry are early adopters and so on, I can see that obviously with OT traditional users are not probably the first one on the line, but the new industry that we see like chemical plastic recycling or hydrogen or carbon capture, which are really new industry that are being developed, they're really at the last generation or really pushing for the last type of solution. This is where really we see more adoption of those open software defined solution versus the traditional, which have already a large investment in their solution. It takes a lot more time and it takes a little bit more effort to go to these open software defined automation. So that's the way I would see it. And it's really from a market perspective, the new markets are really the one that are probing and pulling on these technology because they see the benefit and can deliver the greater benefits to their end user.
Do either of you have any advice for helping reluctant end users or skeptical end users make this switch to the open automation in terms of how they would get started or how they could better understand it?
Maybe I can try to draft an answer, but every end
Yes.
user are really specific. But I can think of, I would say, 4 vectors where we see the challenge to move to openness. The first one I've mentioned a little bit is this inertia of legacy system and vendor lock-in that we operate in currently. The other one that we discussed a little bit is the cybersecurity and trust of the solution in this open world. And there's another one that's more towards our end user and even I would say generation. It's that cultural and skill gap that we have in the industry currently. And also the last one, and I'll describe them a little bit longer after, is the short-term versus the long-term return on investment. So I would say those 4 vectors are really what are the major challenge to see a strong move and a fast movement towards openness. So if I take the inertia of legacy and vendor lock-in, this is, I would say, the single biggest barrier, as we talked about a little bit, is people have the install base, it operates, and as we see, when it operates, typically they don't touch it, right? And also, companies are hesitant to invest in new, unproven sometimes solution when their current proprietary system are still functional. So we all heard the expression say, if ain't broken, don't fix it. So that's in the kind of dilemma we're in that regard from this vendor lock-in that we're in. And if we go back to the second one on cybersecurity and trust, is right now we need to shift from isolated air gap networks to open interconnected system, introduce a new and significant threat vector, because now we expand, if you want, the attack surface for those cybersecurity threats. So open standard and convergence of IT and OT networks exponentially increase the potential of entry points and cyber threats. So OT professionals' primary focus is on the safety and operation continuity are deeply concerned that cyber attack could lead to physical damage. But what we're doing, open standard are emerging and are still looking to promote this cybersecurity a little bit open, as Sarat was mentioning earlier on. So this is a key element that we need to establish the trust on the cybersecurity of these open solutions. And if we move to this cultural and skill gap, there's a cultural divide, I would say. There's IT and OT team that have historically been separated. OT team prioritize always uptime and safety, while IT more focus on data security and maybe flexibility. So different challenges on different. So now how do you bring that in? It's still a work in progress, I would say. And the skill gap from a workforce expertise, the OT workforce is highly skilled in maintaining and programming the specific bespoke solution that they have in their plant. So they probably don't have all the skills in modern IT software development or in networking or even in cybersecurity because these were not necessarily needed with the current proprietary solution that they're operating. In the same way for the cybersecurity knowledge to manage these software-defined open source environment. So it makes those companies worry about adopting new technology because they not necessarily have the skills to be able to maintain it. So again, it's another barrier of entry, I would say, to go to this open software defined. And the last one, which is key, is always this short-term versus long-term ROI. If we look at what the benefits are from an open software-defined automation, it's really more on the long term when you start facing obsolescence and upgrade of solution, where today, typically when it's time to update or upgrade a solution, you hit a brick wall where basically you have to redo everything. In the case of an open solution, as we define those interfaces, we can replace at any time obsolete hardware, obsolete software, as we mentioned earlier, because all these interfaces are standardized and using open standard. So anybody can come in. It could come from different vendors, depending where you are. So really, it's more on the long term that you will see the benefit of such a solution, where the short-term yield in 1 or 2 years, it's probably not there. It's really how's your TCO, your total cost of ownership, is really where this open software-defined automation shines.
Thank you for that.
Maybe a few words that I can add here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the organizations or the set of people who are working on creating this open standards and specifications are very well aware of a good number of points that Andre brought about. One of the key being one of the key aspect of defining such a standard is to make a provision to interface and work with the brownfield as well, right? So the standard is built in such a way that it does take into consideration how does it work with the existing protocols. For example, let's say OPC or even other new protocols. They always kind of think how can you put this to use in a brownfield situation, and there are a lot of case studies and examples that are worked out as proof of concepts by these organizations to make sure such situations are addressed. So that's one thing that I would like to highlight here. And the second important point that Andre mentioned, I just want to reiterate it. It is the skill gap. It is the resistance to change, not just this. In general, the human brain is always resisting to change. So it's very important to focus on the cultural aspects of the organization and how your organization itself is structured and working to make sure you're able to go for a change. I believe that's very critical to a lot of other things. Yes, ROI, there is a finance expert who can easily come up and say, okay, I can expect this ROI in 2 years, this ROI in 5 years. Okay, that's workable. You can do it. Now, the problem is, how do you change a human brain? How do you influence a human brain to really understand what it brings and motivate them to go for the change? I think that's very key, and a lot of organizations are struggling, especially in this aspect. My experience talking to people as part of UAO, when I discuss with them, when I say, I like this technology is too good, I'm ready to go for it, but then somehow there are few people who are not convinced, and I'm really finding it difficult to convince them. Maybe they have their reasons for it, but most of the time it is just that resistance to the change and the mindset.
I understand. I'd like to ask one more audience question before I give you a chance to sum up for us today what our discussion was about.
This is interesting to me too. How does software-defined automation differ from digital twin technology? Lots of jargon bandied around, and somebody would like to know how they relate.
I can try to take a stab, and Sarah, you can certainly complement.
Take a stab.
Obviously, software-defined automation is the complete solution, and that's what we're trying to describe here. How do we move from proprietary to open and software-driven, not hardware-driven, as we've seen in the past, where typically when we mean by hardware-driven, typically when you and the customer and end user buy a solution, it buys the software that's strictly embedded in the hardware platform. Here, we really separate the two, so there's a lot more flexibility. And if we look at digital twin, the digital twin really the ultimate goal of a twin is really to simulate or emulate what's happening on the process, if it's a digital twin for the process. And it's really part of the solution of the software, because digital twin are a software solution. So digital twin is part of the offer in an open software-defined automation. And if we look a little bit beyond what we discussed today and we look at autonomy, digital twin becomes a key element, a key success factor, I would say, even for enabling a larger level of autonomy or higher level of autonomy. So that's the way I would see, and I hope it answers the question regarding digital twin and software defined. I don't know if Sarat, you have other thought around the topic.
Yeah, I mean, digital twin for sure is a digital representation of a physical object. This is what I understand as a digital twin. It doesn't matter what kind of object is it. Is it a pump? Is it a valve? Is it a controller? Or is it something else? You being able to represent it digitally and control its behavior using the digital twin, whatever. The software-defined automation, to me, I think it's not new. It existed for a long, long time. Imagine you just have one controller with a set of I/O and there is no program running it. What is it for? It's of no use. You are going to get it to work, or you're going to make it operational only when you put some software in it and get it to work. Now, the difference is, before you first decide which hardware you want to go with, and then you program this hardware based on how this hardware is to be programmed. On the other hand, what you're doing now with software defined automation is, okay, I don't care what the hardware is. I don't care, am I using a heart sensor, or am I using a 4 to 20 milliamp sensor, or am I using a foundation field bus sensor? I don't care about it. I do want to define the application behavior. How I want to define my control program first, and I want to make this control program resilient enough to work on any hardware, which means irrespective of what type of IO I am using, irrespective of what type of physical connectivity I am using, I want my program to be resilient enough. I want my program to be defined in such a way that I'm able to use it and I'm able to choose the hardware at the end. And to me, this is what software defined automation is, and this is where we are progressing, especially with 61499 standard. At a high level, we call this as top-down approach instead of bottom-up. The bottom-up is the case where you decide what hardware you use, and then you start putting in all this programming and software on top of it to get it to an operational state. Now, the top-down approach is where you first decide how you want to operate with your software, how you want to program your software, what kind of control application you want to develop. So you start there, and late in the game, you decide which hardware you want to use. Now, what flexibility does it bring? Maybe today you're buying a hardware, and as you know, the control systems projects are not short-lived. It takes anything like, say, 2 to 3 years to commission a project. And today you buy some hardware, and in 3 years you see that there is much more powerful hardware at a cheaper rate, right? Now, in the bottom-up approach, you are locking yourself with this hardware, and in the top-down approach, you are building the intelligence, you are building your software and everything, and late in the game, whatever you find as the best hardware at whatever optimal cost, you just go for it and use it. So to me, software defined automation is all about being able to do what you are doing until now without the need to decide upfront what infrastructure or what hardware you're going to use later.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate you being with us today, Sarat. And Andre, I'd like to give you a chance to give us just sort of a final summation about why open standards in automation matter today.
Yeah, that's a a big question. I'll try to answer it rapidly. Open standard are the foundation of open software-defined automation. It is a key element to have not bespoke and proprietary system that basically lock the customer and prevent the full benefit of such automation system in the future. So it is key that we continue to work with the different organizations that can provide those open standards and to make sure that we define what that means and how it benefits the customer in the short term if we can, and mostly in the long term, because this is where it hurts the most, is when obsolescence start hitting and makes it really complicated to keep the operation efficiency as it's supposed to be. So it's a key element in this whole operation efficiency for our customer, and that's what we're really aiming to do is and really help them achieve that highest operating efficiency.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I want to thank our audience for being here today and let you know that if you missed any portion of this webinar or want to watch it again, our discussion will be available on demand. Within 24 hours, you'll receive a link to the recording. And I want to thank both of our speakers today for an excellent discussion. Appreciate you being here with us. On behalf of Automation.com and Schneider Electric, I want to thank you for your attention, and this ends our presentation.